Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I didn't keep a ledger of when Melissa started guarding her phone. It just happened the way hairlines recede or the junk drawer grows around the rubber bands, slow, then suddenly it's the only thing you can see. We'd been married 19 years, which in our cul-de-sac counted as forever. We had Chloe, 15, who made our house sound like a morning radio show, music, laughter, opinions shouted from upstairs. We had a ranch with a porch swing I swore I'd rehang every spring. We had a routine that felt like a handrail. The first time I noticed the phone, it wasn't even a phone. It was Melissa's new leggings, the kind with that shiny sheen and a brand name you have to say quickly, like it's a secret. She started saying I'm heading to the gym the way I might say I'm taking out the trash casual, daily, expected. We'd both gotten soft during the pandemic, and gyms had opened back up with the kind of righteous zeal usually reserved for church. I didn't think twice. I told her good for her. I said I could go, too, and she smiled, tight, polite, and said, "It's my thing." The "my" stuck. It was a word we didn't use much, we were a we house. Her phone started living elusively. It used to sit face up on the kitchen counter, in the pile with keys and coupons and that pen we both hated. Then face down. Then in the pocket. Then in the bathroom, door locked even if she was just brushing her teeth. I'm not a suspicious man by nature. My job at the auto parts distribution center rewards the slow burn, the steady. You don't get your inventory numbers right by guessing what's about to go wrong, you watch patterns, you make notes, you wait. I told myself this was that, watching a pattern that would resolve into something benign. She was 43. Maybe she wanted a corner of life that wasn't shared, a locker with a key only she had. The necklace didn't enter the story for a while. It's funny how the things that anchor the plot feel, at first, like mere props. Melissa wore her mother's necklace maybe once a month, a delicate gold chain, a small oval pendant with a half-worn engraving of a lark. It had belonged to her grandmother before her mother, the kind of heirloom that doesn't scream money, just years. I loved when she wore it. It made her look like the woman in our wedding photo, the one whose hair was pinned and who smiled like she'd been invited into a secret. Her mother, Diane, gave it to her on our 10th anniversary. She said, "Now it's yours to keep. For luck and love," and placed it around Melissa's neck as if she were crowning her. Diane is a woman who speaks in aphorisms. Never move the vacuum while it's on. Always call your father on the way home. Russ never sleeps. She grew up in a house where holding family things meant holding family stories. The necklace was a story. The day Melissa lost it, the house looked like a yard sale had exploded. She emptied drawers, stripped the bed, shook out jackets. She didn't cry, but she had the half-sharp breath of a person holding one in. "I wore it to the gym," she said, "more to the air than to me. I shouldn't have worn it. I never wear jewelry to work out." "You took it off there?" I asked. "At home," she said. "I think. Maybe the locker room." She said locker room like a place I couldn't follow. I got on my hands and knees and did the thing I always do when anyone in this house loses anything, I check where gravity would have taken it. I have found earrings in the carpet nap, parking receipts in the washer drain, Chloe's AirPods living a domestic life under the couch. I checked the dust line along the baseboards like a detective. I found a Lego from the era when Chloe still built cities. No lark. Melissa checked her purse like people check their consciences. She checked the car. She checked the hooks by the door and then checked them again, as if hooks could grow mittens. "It'll turn up," I said, "because that is the American Dad incantation." She shook her head. "It won't," she said, and I heard something in her voice that made me say, "It will," too quickly. She sat on the edge of our bed and rubbed the small hollow where the necklace used to land. She looked younger like that, a kid scared of the principal. "My mom is going to kill me," she said. "Your mom will be fine," I said. "She'll be dramatic, but she'll be fine. We can get the chain replaced, worst case." "It's not the chain," she said, and I knew that. Still, I said it, because chains can be replaced and mothers don't forgive pendant loss. She went to the gym to ask, came back saying the manager had shrugged with the compassion of retail and said, "We'll call if it turns up." It didn't. For a week, Melissa's sadness had a purity I could touch. She was gentle. She leaned into me on the couch. She held Chloe longer in the morning. She said, unprompted, "Thank you for looking," as if thanking me would conjure gold out of heat vents. Then the phone resumed its games. "Spin class," she'd say, and I'd say "got it" and chop onions, and Chloe would tease me. Chef Dad in the house would be itself again for 40 minutes. There are marriages where the fight is the weather. Ours had always been a climate, a steady system you plan around. If we argued, it was about whether to spend grocery money on better coffee or save it for the emergency fund. We argued about whether Chloe needed both soccer and violin. We argued, once, about whether it was normal for a teenager to sleep until noon on Saturdays. It is. In the absence of fights, this new quiet was loud. I didn't name it because naming things makes them unavoidable. On the night that begins the telling of this story, I had grilled chicken too long and we'd laughed about it. "Charcoal chic," Melissa said, laying on the kindness, and our friends from my office, Jason and his wife, Erin, were coming over for dinner. I like Jason because he knows when to talk about work and when to talk about anything else. He's been at the company as long as I have, but while I took the steady path and supervised the night shift 3 years too long, he hopped departments like stones across a creek. We like different football teams. He's a Colts guy, which in Ohio is a personality, and I am stubbornly attached to Cleveland because I inherited a certain masochism from my father. His wife, Erin, is the kind of person who can talk to anyone about anything. She joined the PTA in a school she didn't attend and then made you glad she was there. She has strong necklace energy, if that's a thing, a person who you'd expect to wear a thing like that and carry it without ever noticing its weight. Melissa had dressed in a dress I hadn't seen in a while. She looked like herself again, the self who makes you slow when you see her crossing the room. She wore simple studs in her ears and a bare throat. It might be the first time I thought the phrase bare throat. Writers talk like that. Mechanics don't. But the absence of something that has always been there makes poets of us all. They brought wine. We did the ritual. The men drifted to the back deck because men drift to decks the way magnets drift to iron. The women stayed in the kitchen and made the kind of chatter that is both real and practiced: jobs, school calendars, the ridiculousness of a new grocery store. It got cold as soon as the sun fell, October reminding us that the Midwest doesn't do gentle transitions. We came in before we wanted to admit it was fall. We sat. We poured. We blessed in our secular way. As soon as Erin took off her scarf, I saw it. The lark sat at the base of her throat and the room shrank and then expanded like breath held and released. It wasn't just a lark, it was our lark, the nick on the left curve, the way the engraving had rubbed thin so that in certain light it looked like a smudge. My hands did a thing on their own, gripping the edge of the table. I am not a person who sees ghosts, but my grandmother, who died when I was 9, used to say your body knows before you do. My body knew. I could have told myself anything. That Melissa had found it and loaned it. That there was more than one lark pendant in the world. That old jewelry looks like other old jewelry. But my brain picked up the receipt book of my life and flipped. The phone. The gym. The loss. The way she rubbed her thumb over the place where the pendant should be while looking at nothing. The way she'd started wearing the new sweatshirt from a gym that isn't our gym. They were out of my size at ours, she'd said. You have to tell me where you got that, Melissa said, voice pitched high and light. She stood too quickly, leaning toward Erin like examining a baby. This? Erin touched it with 2 fingers, smiling without looking. Melissa, you gave it to me. At the fundraiser? The rims of my vision went dark. Erin laughed, a bright sound like a dropped spoon. You said it would bring me luck in love. I told Jason we'd better come to dinner and test it out. Jason looked at me, clueless, as if I were in on a bit. Chloe, from the living room where she was half watching some Netflix show and half scrolling, said, Mom? Like a question about whether you're hearing what she's hearing. Melissa smiled. It was the smile that has saved us at parties, at awkward neighbor conversations, the smile that says, we're among friends, let's keep this gliding. She said, oh. Yes. I was just surprised how good it looks on you. Her mouth tried to find the shape of a plan and toss the pieces back onto the table. Erin's brow furrowed like it does when she realizes she's stepped into a story already in progress. You told me it was a family good luck charm, she said. I'm sorry, I thought. It is, Chloe said from the next room, voice flat. She walked in, grabbed a chair, dragged it so close to me I could feel the air move. It was Grandma's and then Nana's and then Mom's. She said Mom with the accent on the wrong syllable, a way of separating the person from the title. I stood. I don't remember deciding to. I didn't handle the chicken, the wine, the conversation I'd planned about the disaster that is our division's logistics software. I walked to the hallway and then into the garage and then outside. It felt performative and the only thing I could do. I heard Melissa say, "Robert," behind me, the way she says it when I'm about to be too much of something. I kept walking to the end of the driveway, past the mailbox with a dent from a wind or I never fixed it, to the sidewalk where we doodle chalk hearts when we feel like remembering we are happy. The suburban night is loud when you pay attention, air conditioners, far-off trains, a dog 2 streets over whose bark you can identify. I put my hands on the top of my head like I'd seen runners do, like maybe if I opened my ribs I'd be able to breathe. The porch light clicked on behind me, the motion sensor assuming I might want a path back in. I didn't move toward it. I don't know how long I stood there before I heard the sliding door and the low murmur of a room negotiating what to do with a person who has left it. Then the voices moved, whispering outward, like circles on water. Chloe found me first. She stood beside me, not touching, matching my posture the way kids copy you when they're small. "Dad," she said. That was it. Just Dad. The word felt like a life raft thrown to a man clinging to nothing. I turned. Her face had the rawness of an apple just sliced. "I want to go to Nana and Pop's and tell them," she said. "Not because I want to hurt Mom." She swallowed. "Because I want someone else to say it out loud, too." Jason stepped into the doorway and did the good friend thing. "We can go," he said quietly to me. "We'll take care of the dishes, don't worry about us." Erin had taken off the necklace. Even from the lawn, in the dark, I could see the space at her throat where it had been. She held it like a bug she hadn't meant to kill. "We should talk," Melissa started, and then stopped because the sentence had nowhere to land. She stood with one hand on the doorframe as if bracing herself against wind. "Erin, I'm so sorry. You don't need to tell me," Erin said, not unkindly. I clearly walked into something. She crossed the room, placed the pendant on the entry table, backed away like leaving an offering at a grave. I had no idea. She glanced at me, a quick, human apology that had nothing to do with responsibility and everything to do with compassion. Jason squeezed my shoulder once in that way men have, and then they left, the whisper of their car a mercy. The house settled into a new, thinner quiet. Chloe stood as if welded to the spot beside me. Melissa came onto the porch but didn't come down the steps. Distance has choreography. "Robert," she said again, and then, to Chloe, "Honey." Her voice broke just a little on the second syllable. "It isn't what you think." "Then what is it?" Chloe asked, the rawness gone. She sounded older than me. Melissa's mouth opened and closed. She touched the doorframe with her fingertips like it might prompt a thought. "It was a gift," she said finally, absurdly. "I gave it to a friend who needed it more." "Erin?" Chloe asked, eyebrows up. "No," Melissa said. "I gave it to someone else, and then I changed my mind." She looked, for one bright, brutal second, like she might say it. Then she said, "I wanted to get it back. I thought giving it to Erin would be." She stopped, swallowed. "Temporary." "Who?" I asked, and the sound of my voice surprised me with its evenness. The question lived in the center of everything, there was no path around it. She shut her eyes. "It's nobody you know," she said, and even she heard the comedy in it. She looked at Chloe. "It was stupid. I thought that it would bring you luck in love," Chloe said, quoting Erin as if they were in a school play. Her eyes filled, then cleared in that impossible teenage tide. "I can't be here," she said to me, calm. "Can we go to Nana and Pop's?" We didn't pack. I didn't lock the sliding door. I did the one thing that felt like a moral choice. I picked up the necklace from the entry table and put it in my pocket. It felt wrong to put it back on a neck in that moment, any neck. Melissa reached out as if to stop me. I moved past her without contact, the way people pass each other in hospital corridors when the news is too big to be helped by the bump of a shoulder. Diane and Frank live 10 minutes away, in a two-story with shutters painted the exact blue that looks good in realtor photos. Diane opens her door like she's been waiting for you even when she hasn't. That night she opened it like someone who knew the shape of the news before the words arrived. Maybe the flick of the porch light on our street had been some cosmic semaphore that reached her. Maybe my voice on the phone, "We're coming over," carried everything in its flattened vowels. In their living room, we always sit on the same furniture. People don't talk about this enough, how families have assigned seats that hold history like cushions hold shape. I took the corner of the couch by the window. Chloe took the floor at my feet, leaning into my leg like she did when she was 8. Diane sat in her chair under the lamp with the knitted shade. Frank stood until he had to sit. He's a legacy of a man who believes information lands better if he's vertical. We had Jason and Aaron over for dinner, I started, because the small door sometimes opens to the larger room. Aaron was wearing a necklace. Melissa's necklace. I pulled it out of my pocket. Diane made a sound like a kettle starting to think about boiling. She said Melissa gave it to her. For luck and love. Diane's hand went to her throat in perfect choreography, as if she were trying to keep air in. Frank didn't flinch. His eyes did that old man narrowing thing, focus pulled tight as a wrench. For who? He asked. Calm. Too calm. I don't know, I said, which was the truth and also a placeholder for everything else I didn't know. Melissa says it was a mistake. She says she gave it to someone else first. Diane stood, and for a second I thought she'd faint in the theatrical way my grandmother used to threaten for effect. She didn't faint. She crossed the room and put both hands on the back of the couch like she needed to steady herself against the facts. Tears came the way rain starts, sudden, complete. That necklace, she said, and the words were a prayer and a curse, is my mother's promise. She looked at Chloe, then at me. We don't give that to anyone but family. Frank's jaw worked. He has one of those faces that looks carved to begin with, the kind that deepens instead of collapses with age. He sat down, finally, the sound of the cushion giving under him louder than I expected. He looked at me. He looked at Chloe. He looked at the necklace in my hand. She gave away our name, he said quietly, and I felt something inside me straighten up and listen. She gave away the family's honor for a lover. I had never heard Frank use the word lover. It sounded crazy in his mouth, an old world word wrapping a new world sin. Chloe flinched. Tears filled her eyes again, angry this time. I'm staying with Dad, she said. No falter, no ask. Frank nodded like a judge pronouncing a sentence that matches the crime. Melissa walked in without knocking. She is a person who has keys to a lot of places, and that has always felt like a kindness. It did not feel like a kindness then. Diane turned, hands shaking, and Melissa reached for her and then stopped when she saw the look on her mother's face. Mom, she said, not sure whether to run toward fire or away from it. Diane pointed at the necklace in my hand. Do you know what that is? She asked. Yes, Melissa said, small. Say it, Diane said, not letting up. Say what it is. It's Nana's, Melissa said. It's ours. And who did you give it to? Frank asked, voice level, and those of us who know him knew that was scarier than a shout. Melissa swallowed. I can't, she looked at me, at Chloe, at her father's unblinking eyes. It was someone. From the gym. She laughed, a tiny mad sound she didn't mean to make. Isn't that cliché? A cliché with quads. No one smiled. It was stupid. I was stupid. He said his wife left him, that he hadn't felt seen in years. Her mouth twisted, disgust aimed at herself like a thrown bottle. I told myself I was rescuing him from sadness. Look at me, she said, turning her hands over like a magician whose trick has failed. I thought I was some kind of saint of dumb luck. Frank stood again. He seemed taller than the ceilings. He didn't curse, he didn't shake. He spoke with the gravity of a person naming a thing so the rest of the room can follow it. You gave family honor to a stranger for the price of his attention. His voice had no air for argument. You used your mother's name as currency for a flirtation. He looked at me. Robert, this is your house to decide, but as far as this family's support, he broke then, just a hairline crack, the word support arriving like a cinder block. You are our son. She will not lean on us to get back what she threw away. Diane cried openly now, the kind of crying that looks like a person has been cracked down the middle and all the water you didn't know was inside them is flooding the floor. Melissa went toward her anyway, hand out, a daughter reaching. Diane took a step back. No, she said, and it wasn't angry, it was sick. You don't get to make me the place you land from this. Chloe pressed her forehead into my leg and I put my hand in her hair the way I did when she was a toddler who believed I could scare monsters away just by being bigger than them. I had no monster in me to slay. I had the necklace in my palm and a silence as heavy as a car in a ditch. Melissa wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. She looked at me and then at Chloe and then at the front door, which had never, in its life, looked so much like a friend. I'll go, she said softly. I'll pack a bag and go to a hotel. I'll figure. No, Diane said, voice finding steel again in the middle of her break. You will go to your sister's for tonight. Tomorrow you will meet with me and Frank and Robert and listen. You will not run to a hotel like this is a movie where you get to be tragic. You will answer to the people whose lives you fractured. Melissa nodded. It was a small nod, a child's nod. Okay, she whispered. She looked at Chloe. Honey, Chloe stood abruptly. Don't, she said, which is a word teenagers are very good at. I don't want to hear anything right now. She picked up her backpack even though she hadn't brought it, and I felt a hysterical flash of how children try to grab tools for emergencies and choose the wrong ones. I'm staying with Dad. Melissa looked at me over our daughter's head and I tried to find a face that didn't feel like a weapon or a lie. Frank stepped closer to me than he ever has in any room. Do you need anything? He asked. It was old-school male tenderness, the kind that replaces please don't die with how can I hold your ladder. I need to go home, I said. I need to get my kid in her bed. I need to sleep in my house. I didn't say, I need the version of my life that existed before tonight. That version didn't exist anymore. It was an artifact like the lark, and fragile in the same way. We drove home in a quiet that didn't feel like silence, it felt like a person sitting on your chest. The neighborhood was doing its normal things, a dad coiling a hose, a kid on a scooter resisting bedtime, the smell of someone else's dinner. In our foyer, the house smelled like us, laundry detergent and something warm and manufactured from the candle Melissa likes in the fall. The necklace was a weight in my pocket. Chloe brushed her teeth with such ferocity I worried for enamel. She came to the kitchen where I'd stopped because kitchens are where fathers stop to think and pretend they're looking for something necessary like scissors. Dad, she said, not asking me to fix it, not pretending I could. I'm with you. I nodded because I didn't trust the sound options of my body. I set the necklace on the counter. It looked small there, the way a penny does on a concrete floor, old, insufficient to pay for anything. Want cocoa? I asked, and we both laughed at the stupidity of it, and then I made us cocoa because doing a small, sweet thing is sometimes the only religion that works. Melissa came by the next day with her sister, Amanda, and the smallest suitcase a person can buy. We didn't yell. We sat at the table that has seen birthday cakes and stomach bugs and once, when Chloe was 3, a watercolor disaster that stained the wood like a map of the Great Lakes. We did what the Midwest teaches you to do, we were practical. We talked about where Melissa would stay, Amanda's for now, what Chloe needed, clarity, not persuasion, who would tell the school, I would, because I can say we're going through something without adding a footnote. Melissa said she wanted to tell her own version to her parents, and I told her she didn't get to be the editor of this story anymore. Diane would have her say. We did not talk about the man from the gym. The word gym was a thread we didn't pull because we were holding everything else with tired fingers. It would come, the pulling. But not yet. The necklace sat on the table between us like a gavel that had already struck. Melissa reached for it once and pulled her hand back as if it were hot. It's not mine anymore, she said. I didn't say, it was never yours, not really. I am not a cruel man. I am a man too tired to add extra truth where there is already enough. That afternoon, Frank came by with a toolbox for no reason other than to have a reason. He fixed the hinge that had squeaked on the cabinet near the fridge for a year, because fixing is his way of speaking when words would be extravagant. He poured himself coffee and me coffee and said, "You are not alone," and then he disassembled a door latch like it had done us wrong. Diane arrived with food. Of course she did. It was a casserole with a name we've been using since the 80s, Company Chicken. We were company in our own house. She touched Chloe's cheek and then mine and then the necklace without picking it up. "We'll keep it here a while," she said, as if the necklace needed rest and our home provided that. Later, when she left, she hesitated at the door. "Robert," she said, and I turned. "We love you." She paused. "We love her, too." The kindness of that nearly sunk me. The next week was a series of practical miracles. Jason covered a shift so I could take Chloe to cross-country practice. Aaron texted Chloe a playlist because teenage girls speak in songs and it is a love language I can speak. Melissa met with a counselor the pastor recommended, not for redemption, not for show, at least that's what she said when she called and I let it go to voicemail and then listened to it anyway. She moved into a small apartment between our house and her parents', a place over a dentist's office with a balcony that looks like a fire escape with a dream. We wrote a schedule on legal pads like we were outlining a court case, and in a way, we were, nights here, nights there, the week bending around Chloe's meets and homework and the fact that her heart had been asked to carry too much. We told the school, and Chloe's guidance counselor said all the right things and, more importantly, nothing stupid. "You're allowed to be mad and okay on the same day," she told my daughter, and Chloe nodded like someone had given her a hall pass for living. Melissa came to the house one afternoon to pick up winter coats. She stood in the doorway to Chloe's room and watched her pack a duffel and did not tell her to add a sweater because she had forfeited the right to say sweaters. She asked me, in the kitchen, if I hated her. I told her the truth, which is that hatred is a big engine, and I am a man with a family sedan heart. "I don't hate you," I said. "I hate what you did. I hate that I am the person who now has to remember before and after every time I look at the fall leaves." She nodded, which is to say she heard me without expecting it to be a compliment. We never got the necklace appraised, never checked to see if it had secret value beyond the obvious. Diane came by 2 weeks later and picked it up. She didn't ask. She held it in her open palm and said, "I'm going to keep it for a while." She looked at Chloe. "When you are ready, and when you are steady, we'll talk." It felt right. Maybe that's all family is, the place where the right thing can sometimes feel like a thing you can hold. I caught myself staring at Melissa's empty hook by the door 100 times in those first days. Hooks are where we pretend our lives hang, the keys, the dog leash, the Cubs hat. I caught myself talking to her in my head the way you talk to a person who is in another room. "Don't forget the dry cleaning. If you go to Kroger, get the good tortillas. Did you see how Chloe sprinted the last 100? In time, the questions went silent. In time, other hooks filled. On a Sunday in November, Chloe and I raked the yard under a low sky that promised snow without delivering. She worked with a competence that made something inside me build new scaffolding. We piled leaves into a tarp, dragged them to the curb, came back for more. Work like that makes your mind quiet. We didn't talk about the gym, or the man, or even the necklace. Chloe said, out of nowhere, "Do you think the lark is supposed to be for luck or for music?" "Why not both?" I said, and she smiled, small. We went inside to the smell of something warming but not burning, which felt like a victory. I set 2 mugs on the counter and reached, automatically, for the hook where my keys hang. My fingers brushed the wood. It was smooth where years had worn it. The house hummed with the normal electricity of a Sunday, football on low in 100 houses, casseroles in ovens, kids finishing homework they should have started earlier. My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa, "Chloe free for dinner this week? Maybe Wednesday?" I typed, "She has a meet Wednesday. Thursday's open." She responded with a thumbs up. We were a transactional partnership now. It felt both sad and clean. That night, before bed, I read in the chair by the window the way I used to when Chloe was a baby and I'd rock for hours, believing the motion mattered more than the lullabies. The book wasn't very good, but it had chapters and I needed markers. Chloe came in and sat on the arm of a chair the way she did when she wanted to be both a kid and not. "Dad?" she said. "Yeah?" "When I'm older," she said, "if Nana wants to, do you think I could wear the necklace sometimes?" She said it like asking if she could borrow the car someday, not like asking for the moon. I looked at her, and for a second she was the toddler who had once asked if she could take our dog to kindergarten in her backpack. "I think," I said, slow, careful, "that the women in this family will make a new set of rules for who wears what and when. And I think you'll be part of writing them." I reached for her hand. "And I think your mother will have to learn how to stand in rooms and listen without asking to be forgiven yet." Chloe nodded. "Okay," she said, which is the most adult word I know. She kissed my head. "Good night." After she went to bed, I turned off the lamp and sat in the dark for a minute, listening to the house tick. The lark was out of the house now, back at Diane's, back in the line of women who'd worn it and didn't need it to tell them anything about luck. The man from the gym was a silhouette, a story that would get told over coffee and whispers and then, someday, be a dot at the end of a sentence. Melissa was in an apartment with a balcony that probably didn't suit her, learning how to make dinner for one. I was a man who thought he wasn't the sort of man things like this happened to, and now I was the sort of man they happened to. The difference, I realized, was smaller than I had imagined. People make choices, and then they have to live in the houses those choices build. The next morning, I woke before my alarm, made Chloe pancakes, packed her lunch with an extra apple because she likes apples when she's nervous. I stood on the porch as she left and watched her walk to the corner where the bus sighs and gathers kids like a lighthouse gathers boats. She turned back and waved, and I waved back, and the wave wasn't a promise that nothing would ever hurt again. It was a promise that we would keep doing the ordinary brave things, show up, tell the truth, fix the hinge, make the list, say I'm here, even on nights when the porch light clicks on and the driveway feels like a border between what you thought your life was and what it is now. A week later, Diane sent a picture of the necklace laid out on a piece of velvet. "I took it to be cleaned," she wrote. "It needed a rest." She added, "When the time is right, Chloe can decide." I stared at the photograph longer than a photograph should be stared at. The lark looked like itself again. Not shining, just steady. I texted back, "Thank you." I didn't say for what, because the list was long and I didn't want to make thanking into an inventory. On Sunday, Frank and I drove to Lowe's and bought a new porch light because the old one flickered like a bad mood. He lectured me on wattage for no real reason and I listened because that's how men love each other without saying so. We installed it and then stood on the sidewalk in the early dark and admired the way it made the house look like itself. "Looks good," he said. "It does," I said. We went inside. Chloe had made a playlist that wasn't sad. She shoved me with her shoulder and said, "You can't dance," and I said, "I can't," and we danced anyway, badly, in a kitchen where the hooks hold new things and the air smells like the kind of life you can keep making because you choose to. Outside, the porch light did what it was supposed to do. It turned strangers into shapes you could name, it made comings and goings honest, it said this is where we are, and if you're ours, you can find your way back. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.